So Frank, today we're going to talk about getting transplants started by yourself rather than buying them. And there's several procedures you need to go through about doing this successfully. The first thing is to think about timing of when you're going to be transplanting whatever you're growing out into the field, so to speak. And so in the first case, let's think about their frost sensitivity. So I'm going to put down here some plants that can be grown in early May. And that would be the cole crops. Cole crops meaning cabbage and broccoli, cauliflower, any of those kinds of things. They're fairly frost tolerant, and you can put those out anytime from about the 10th of May on. Then there are crops which are frost sensitive, and those basically need to be crops that you put out June 1st. And of course the one thing that comes to mind first of all are tomatoes. Peppers would be in that area, and flowers like marigolds, zinnias. Those crops, you don't want to put those out until the last hint of frost is gone. So once you know when you want to transfer your crop out, the next thing is to think about how long does it take for the seeds to germinate and get up. And I'm going to put down here quick germination. That would be things like marigolds, zinnias. These they'll be up in 3 to 5 days. So they come up pretty quickly. Longer germination would be tomatoes. You can count on 7 to say 12 days for tomatoes to get up. Peppers, it takes a little longer, probably 2 weeks. And so don't plan on seeing pepper seedling emerging much before then. So the next thing you need to consider is what do you plant these things in? And one of the mediums that I recommend that you use is called ProMix. And let's go over and take a look at that now. ProMix is a good medium that's composed primarily of peat moss, perhaps a few other little things. I get a bag of it from Cashman Nursery. You can find it from any nursery kind of company. And a bag like that costs about $45, but it's packed in there tightly. It'll last you probably several years. So here's what the ProMix looks like. And it's a nice fluffy material. And it's pretty dry, and so you're going to want to add some water to it before you put it into the pot. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to add some water here and mix it around. You want to mix it to the point that it feels pretty moist to yourself, and if you pick it up and make a ball out of it, it kind of holds together. We're going to add some mix here to the container. Get it in here, and then when you've got it filled to the top, you want to press it down, because if you don't, otherwise it'll settle on you when you add water to it. So we've got some here, and I've pressed it down, and let's add some more to fill it up to the top. And now it's pretty much ready to plant. You've got it filled up to the top. And now, how do you plant it? Well, it depends on the size of the seed. I have some seed here of petunias. In fact, these are coated, pelleted petunia seeds. And I'm going to just sprinkle these on the top. And I'm not sure whether you can see those or not. Do they show up okay?
Mm-hmm.
And to be sure that they make contact with the soil mix, just take your finger and press them down lightly, like that. You don't want to bury them in the soil because they're such small seeds that if you got them in there too deep, they'd never make it back up. So that's what you do with a small seeded crop. Now with a larger one like a marigold, I like to use something like this large pencil, or you could use the end of a Sharpie pencil, something like that, to punch in holes. They're about a quarter of an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch deep. And then you can take your seed, and we'll take some marigold seed here. I like to use a pair of tweezers to put that into the holes. Say about 2 seeds per unit there. Put them into the hole, you can see them. And then once you've got those added to it, go in and take your finger and press it down around that seed. That way the seed is probably covered with 1/8 to 1/4 inch of your growth medium. And you put it down there tightly. And finally, before you put it into your growth chamber, you're probably going to want to cover this with plastic wrap. That's to keep the moisture from evaporating from this soil mix, which loses moisture pretty rapidly. So do that, but then be prepared to watch when those plants emerge. Just as soon as you see some green material poking up, pull the plastic wrap off. And now once you've got your pots seeded up, you're going to want to put them someplace you can grow them. Some people just use a windowsill as a place because they don't have a growth chamber. But I wanted to have a place that was a little better than a windowsill. And so I built this growth chamber that you see right here. It's constructed basically of 2x4s that support the main part of the growth chamber. And then on the tops at the different shells is just 4x8, 3/4 inch plywood that I put in there. And then as far as light is concerned, I just bought these shop lights, 4-foot long fluorescent lights that provide, I've got 3 of them in this chamber that's about 6 feet long. Now surrounding the chamber, what I used was just this 1 inch, or maybe it's 1.5 inch thick foam that contractors use to put around buildings and so forth. It's very inexpensive. It's got some rigidity to it. I mean, you can't bend it, you're going to break it. But it provides insulation, and I put that on all sides of the growth chamber except the one that's where we're facing. And there I've got a removable one of these foam layers that kind of provides a way of keeping the growth chamber intact. Interestingly enough, these fluorescent lights produce just about enough heat to keep this growth chamber about 80 degrees, even though the room that it's in is probably 60 degrees. And that's just a perfect temperature for growing these plants. And you can see some that I've started here. I've got some tomato plants that are about, been in the ground now about 3 weeks. They're coming up. I've also got some smaller ones. Here are the petunias that came up. And so it takes them about the same amount of time to come up. But I used put these here in the growth chamber, and of course after they're up you got to water them every day or so, probably not more than once a day, but you want to keep them growing. I find that I can grow plants in this growth chamber for about 3 to 4 weeks. After that, the light quality is not quite good enough to take them up to maybe 3 or 4 inches tall, so I'd like to move them from the growth chamber up into my sunroom for the final, say, 2 weeks of growth before I set them outside.
Well, hello fellow gardeners, Frank here. Today I'm going to talk to you about using an arrow garden as an alternative method of seed starting for your outdoor garden. So what is an arrow garden? Well, it might be called a hydroponic appliance. Here on the bottom you see the control panel, the tank that holds the nutrients in the water, the deck where the plants grow, and the light. To set it up, you fill the tank with water and nutrients, Put the seed pods in the deck, and then just follow the touch screen instructions on the control panel, and away it goes. The simpler models don't even have a control panel. You just simply plug them in, and away they go. This particular garden here, I've got lettuce and tomatoes. Here's another with basil. That old basil on the back is over 200 days old. And here's another one with micro-dwarf tomatoes in it. As you can see, AeroGardens come in various sizes. This is an AeroGarden Sprout, their least expensive model, and this is just the way it comes from the factory. These are available from between $70 and $100 online. It has a water tank on the bottom where the water and the nutrients go, the deck where you plant what you want to grow, and then a light hood that's adjustable in height, so the taller the plants get, the higher you can make that hood go. Now the way these come from the factory is they have pre-planted seed pods. This one's curly parsley, don't know if you can see that or not. And in this particular model, it just goes in like that. You can grow 3 different kinds of plants. But if you want to start seeds, you need to buy the seed starting accessory. Okay, so this is what the seed starting kit looks like. It has a deck with 15 holes in it. And you just take these things that are called sponges, soak them in water, put them in the hole, put a seed in, cover the works up, and sometimes as quick as 3 to 4 days, the plants will germinate. That's one thing about an AeroGarden. The plants germinate extremely rapidly. The seeds germinate extremely rapidly. Once the seeds have germinated, you remove the plastic cover, let them grow for about 3 weeks. Then they're ready to transplant. Now when I'm growing these for the outdoor garden, I transplant the cole crops into 2-inch pots and the tomatoes and peppers into 4-inch pots, and then move those pots under lights or into my greenhouse, depending on the time of year. But since I'm videoing this in the winter, all the plants I started here, I just moved to other AeroGardens to give them more space. That includes the lettuce and the dwarf tomatoes that I showed you before. Right now it's near the end of February. I planted these plants in early January, and as you can see, they've got a pretty good root system at this point. AeroGarden sells seed starting kits for all their various models. Here, this is for the Bounty model, and this will start 31 seedlings. I start a lot of seedlings every year, most of them in a setup pretty similar to what Don Mathry showed in the previous video. When I use my AeroGarden is when I need seedlings in a hurry, or at a time of year when it's not convenient to grow them using the traditional setup or to buy them at the nurseries. For example, I like to put a crop in after I pull my garlic in mid-July. So if I back up a few weeks from mid-July, I can start a set of cole crops that'll be just the right size for transplanting at the point the garlic is ready to pull. And that way I'll have a fall crop of broccoli, cabbage, and whatever else I want to grow. So that's one of the things I really like about the AeroGarden seed starting setup. Another thing is it's just so convenient. You can set this up in about 5 minutes and have it planted within a half an hour. And then just plug it in and turn it on, and you're on your way. The advertising for AeroGardens engages in a bit of hyperbole. They promise that you can grow your own salad. Well, as you can see here, I'm growing my own salad. However, the lettuce will be ready to pick months before the tomatoes are. Nonetheless, AeroGardens are a lot of fun, and people try growing all kinds of things in them. It's a great way to keep your hand in gardening during the winter. And it's a great way to start seeds.
Hi, I'm Kim Coder, and I'm going to show you the Parks Biodome. I've been using this method for my seed starting for about maybe 8 years or so, and it's been the best thing that I've ever used. I used to use those little Jeffy 7s, and then they'd get I was going to say blossom end rot, but that's not right. Damping off disease. And so this works really good. It sprouts some seeds really quickly, I think, and it's the right amount of moisture. I don't get damping off disease. It works really well. So this system comes with a plastic lid that's really nice and solid. It's got air vents in the top. When I start my seeds, I leave the air vents closed, and then once I get the seedlings up, I open the air vents. That fits right on this tray that is nice and sturdy, doesn't break, doesn't leak. And then there are these pieces of foam that have these little holes in them. And in the holes, you put these sponges that are biodegradable that come with the biodome system. There are different sizes of sponges. I chose the smallest ones because I usually leave my seeds in this until they just have 4 leaves, the two true leaves, and till they have a few roots coming out the bottom here. And then I transplant them into 4x4 soil pots. So to start with this, you take the sponges that you're going to use today and you soak them in water so they're nice and soaked up, and put them in your squares where you want to grow the seeds. Each sponge has a little hole in the top so that you can poke the seed down in there if it's a seed that needs to be down deeper and have no light to germinate. If it's a seed that needs light to germinate, or a seed that is really super tiny like my lettuce seeds, then I just set them right on top. And then after I get the sponges in here, I go ahead and label it on the front with what different seeds they are, because sometimes all the seeds kind of look the same. So for instance, I'm going to take some Bib lettuce seeds and get them started this time of year. I'm hoping I could maybe even get them growing enough that they would be able to go into the greenhouse early this year. So the Bib lettuce seeds are very, very tiny. I'm just going to set them right on top. And if you have older seed, you're not sure about germination, you can put a couple on each sponge. If you have seeds you're pretty sure of the germination, you can go ahead and just put one in each sponge. If you do use more than one seed in a sponge, once they get to about that tall with the 4 leaves, it's probably a good idea to cut off one plant that you don't need, so you just have one plant in each of your 4x4 pots. After I get them in here, I put water in the bottom, and the way that I tend to, they say to just leave like a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch of water in there, but what I just do is go along like this, and if it's floating, it's enough water, and if it's sitting on the bottom, it's not enough water. Then I have the top that I put on with the vents closed so that it'll be the right amount of moisture to germinate. I have a nice seedling heating mat. That really does help for getting your seeds to germinate, to have them be warm. So I put them on the heat mat. As soon as they sprout and the seeds show a little bit of green, then I also put the lights on. And because I'm hoping to put my plants outside a lot to harden them off and get them into the greenhouse in the daytime and the and inside at night if it's too cold in the greenhouse. I don't get real particular about my lights, but I do get particular about keeping the lights nice and low so they are bright on here. So this is my 60-cell Parks Biodome. In the Parks catalog, you can see that you can order biodomes with 18 cells with big sponges if you would prefer to keep your plants growing in here for longer in the hydroponic system before you plant them in the pots. Or there's a 40-cell Parks Biodome also. And one more thing, once you get the green plants growing, then there's a special Parks fertilizer that you put in the water, and it has just the right amount of fertilizer to keep the plants healthy for as long as you need them to be in here until you transplant them. One other thing that I wanted to mention, the instructions that come with the Parks Biodome say that before you plant your seeds and use your biodome styrofoam block, that you should take the styrofoam block and soak it for 30 minutes in 10% bleach solution, because that will kill any bacteria that could harm your plants. I have done that before, and I've timed it exactly 30 minutes because I thought that seems like pretty strong bleach. And what happened with mine is the bleach seems to have absorbed into the styrofoam, and then I get my plants growing pretty well, and then eventually they start to turn yellow and aren't as happy. My neighbor accidentally soaked his Parks Biodome styrofoam block overnight, and his plants all died. So I think it's probably better to be not use so much bleach on them. In closing, the reason I really like to use this system is it's not flimsy, it doesn't break, and it does really do a nice job of getting the seeds to germinate right away. And I get healthy plants. I don't have damping off disease with this system. And the sponges are biodegradable, they break down in my garden. And it works the best that anything I've ever tried.